ambulance services can benefit from new forms of mobility. For example, can we achieve safe and secure, socially acceptable and beneficial contribution to our healthcare system from advanced air mobility? Further aspects, can we leverage our investment in technological infrastructure for mobility for general hazard and risk prediction, or more effective emergency response systems by applying intelligent software? But let's start with an overview of the agenda. Firstly, Serdar will give a UTech address and mission statement. Afterwards, Johnny Du, in his keynote, he will present future advanced air mobility for emergency and disaster response. He'll address eVTOL aircraft technology for public services, mission elements, and emergency response applications. Following this, we will get initial insights from Vincent van den Brekel and Enoch Armengol, and after that, we will open the panel discussion. We will expand the discussion and address AI-based intelligent dispatch solutions for emergency service, and also an interesting aspect for deep hearing sound detection as a missing piece for road safety prevention. Finally, we will have an open Q&A session with all of you. So you are invited to send us all your questions, comments, and remarks via the chat function. So today, our panel will be facilitated by Serdar Yüksel, who is the Director of the Mobility Alliance at UTech Chamber. Now, I'd like to hand over to Serdar. Thank you. Serdar, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Bernd, and welcome all to the webinar. You may like to click on the button bottom right just beside the hand raise icon to view the slides, restore presentation. Bottom right just beside the hand raise icon to view the slides, please. We are an NGO not-for-profit organization established in 2015 with our headquarters in Munich, Germany, and an office in Switzerland. Our core value proposition is exposure, which means networking. A very powerful virtual tech platform that we are having our webinar on now, and internationalization. About our organizational structure, we have three different group of sections we call alliances, regional ones from LATAM to China, and technology alliances, not only mobility, as well all other technology areas we cover, and thematic impact alliances, including finance, SDGs, climate action, and women in tech. We see the events as the base for networking, and that's why we have hundreds of webinars every year under all alliances with such great keynote and panelists as speakers at our webinars like today. And we will start doing our webinars hybrid mode, online and in person, with virtual expos, more than 20 in a year. And we have thousands of audience from all around the world, mostly company owners and decision makers. And why we do this? Because we create the base for networking, as we are the #1 technology network in Europe, and our mission is to be the leading one in the world. And we invite our great panelists to business networking events and invite our potential members too. And we do it weekly at the second networking meeting. We rather select a topic and exchange any opportunities we have among the members and some invited external participants. As well, we look for EU funding or other worldwide development aid organization funding opportunities for our members. And in our ecosystem, we write white paper and position paper, and we have a very powerful vision, very interesting visions for Europe magazine. People pay really attention, and you can write articles and you share your article online on your social media accounts like LinkedIn and others. We have several different programs you can make use of to your benefit. And under the tech.forum, which is our virtual platform, you will have your virtual booth when you join us, and you can also participate at virtual expos and the database you can get access to. And whenever you like to get more information, you can either get back to me as the mobility director or other colleagues for any partnership opportunities with us or about the about the membership features you may like to get any information. Thank you for listening to me. And now I'll get back to the webinar. Wilhelm, you may like to turn off your camera, please.
Yes.
Thank you, as we are all together with our panelists. Thank you. And as Bernd and me before I mentioned, the chamber wants to achieve specific targets. The European Technical Chamber is a network of people knowing from many perspectives what technologies and how to deal with technology. And let me introduce to you all Johnny Du, our keynote speaker today. Johnny Du is the president of International Vehicle Research Incorporation, focusing on mission for good autonomous electric-powered vertical flight technologies and applications. He is the group leader of the NASA VFS, Transformative Vertical Flight, TVF, Working Group for Public Services, teaming with other 100 industrial leaders and experts to develop the roadmap and use cases for advanced air mobility, eVTOL. He was previously the Executive VP of Advanced Technology, Business Development, and Engineering at Continental Aerospace, Vice President at Diamond Aircraft in Canada, with over 30 years of experience managing and developing crewed and uncrewed aviation products. Johnny, it is our great pleasure to have you here today. It is now the time to share your ideas with us. The stage is yours, and now, please.
Thank you, Sudha. Let me share my presentation.
Yes, please.
All right. Can you see it okay?
It is popping up. Yes, we see it. Please, Johnny.
All right, good deal. Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to talk about the future advanced air mobility for emergency and disaster response. Many of you already heard of, read about, or engaged in advanced air mobility. Sometimes we call it the AAM. The aircraft, quite often we call the eVTOL, means electric vertical takeoff landing. When we say electric, typically we're referring to as electric propulsion. Quite often it's a many distributed electric propulsion, as contrary to many of the conventional traditional aircraft design. The important part about the so-called advanced air mobility really has to do with that it's really a system level development and integration with a broad range of innovative technologies and aerial vehicle configuration and capabilities. And the picture I show you here, what's very encouraging is 2 years ago, when I tried to put a slide like this together, most of those airplanes I can find are the artist concept sketches, renderings. But today, if you look at this one, every one of them are actual flying airplane. That's how far we have come to. And the exciting thing about that is now we can leverage all the advancement, the technology, the platform, the systems to really help people and save lives. Let me briefly introduce what is the Transformative Vertical Flight Working Group. It's really a working group that organized by NASA and Vertical Flight Society. We have 3 working groups. First one is focusing on private recreational vehicles. Of course, that also include Part 91 operation, corporate use airplanes, and so on. And working group 2 and 3 is focused on operations, which include the urban air mobility, sometimes we're referring to as air taxi. Also include the regional air mobility, when the platform can fly a little bit further, and that become city to city, town to city connections. That all lump into the group. Used to be 2 groups, so now they call it group 2 and 3. Now, group 4, which I'm the lead, is focusing on public services. We took a very broad view at take advantage of any technology, development, platform, system capabilities. Let's find the best way to leverage that and put it to good use to help enable search and rescue, law enforcement, medical transport, emergency, humanitarian response, and military operations. One thing I want to remind the audience is that in many, many cases, when there's a natural disaster of large scale, quite often different nations were able to leverage the military capabilities moving to help participate in the recovery, rescue operations, and so on. Just on the Working Group 4, we have published a NASA white paper. The identified 5 more promising, more near-term use cases, which including fighting wildfire, logistic and natural disaster and humanitarian crisis, medevac, law enforcement and public safety, as well as last mile aerial delivery. There is a link at the lower corner here that if you're interested, feel free to download a copy of this NASA white paper. And we would love to get additional feedback, input, tell us what you think. Any additional collaboration will be very much welcome. Talk about some of the opportunities for public services. Here's a list. This is an eye chart, so I'm not going to go through every detail here. But each subgroup, basically, we identify some of the potential applications, as well as which operating entities, agencies that may have the opportunity to leverage those capabilities. And take an example, medical transport. We can think of many possible use cases within the medical transport, including the what we call the distributed on-demand emergency response, so that we have many vertical flight machines positioned at either EMS stations or at the fire stations, whatever, because they are distributed. Because in some cases they can be sized in such a way that they can be take off and land at the fire station or at the hospital or even a clinic. By having those capabilities, we can respond to emergency medical call much faster. And we all know time to care can determine the outcome of a medical response. That's just one example of the use cases. So if you like, contact me. I'll be more than happy to discuss more in depth of each and every use cases and potential operations. Now, since we'll talk about the emergency response, I'd like to take time to talk about 2 aspects. One is natural disaster evacuation, rescue, and recovery. That's kind of like the 3 steps that that we can respond, leveraging this on-demand distributed mobility, which quite often the AAM type of platform and systems are more suitable for what we call the last mile capabilities. And in today's capability, we have a lot of ground assets, marine vessels, and of course, aerial capabilities. But a lot of times, not enough of them, and when we need them, they may or may not be available at the specific location we needed them. So what we're hoping for is to take advantage of the AAM and the long-term significant large volume deployment for other commercial purposes and recreational purposes. We can leverage the production volume, the lower cost in acquisition, and much lower service and maintenance costs. And that way we can have many more of those units available to perform last mile mobility support operations. Now, we all know that how bad, especially lately, the natural disaster has become. Everything seems to be getting worse, and we got unprecedented flooding happening around the world. The hurricane is getting worse, and of course, sometimes we call it typhoon on the Pacific side. And wildfire is just totally unbearable. We got I look up one number that not only it burns out a lot of properties in the wood, the trees, in some cases we have casualties and so on. What we can do is leverage the last mile mobility capabilities to not only help fight the wildfire, not in the large scale, but at the early stage of the fire broke out. That's when we can leverage those platform systems to help reduce the spreading and reduce the end scope of the fire impact. And of course, earthquake is somewhat unpredictable. It may be hard to preposition assets like the hurricane could, but it is helpful that if we have many available units, if and when the earthquake occurs, we can have the last mile mobility capability to get people to the hospital quickly and provide, deliver food, water, medicine into the disaster area. Now, in addition to natural disaster type of situation that we need large scale response capability, we also have day-to-day situation. We have building fires, we get police missions, operations, respond to public safety. We have search and rescue needs, and we have medical transport requirement. And there's two types. One is emergency, like the lower left-hand corner. Traffic accident happens every day, everywhere. But if we can have compact transport system that can take the medical personnel on site, first responder on site quickly within minutes, not half an hour or an hour during traffic hour, we can quickly take care of the injured person, determine if needs to be sent to the hospital. If so, put it into the transport platform, push a button, autonomously arrive at the nearest clinic or hospital. The same thing, on the other hand, sometimes we can leverage the capability to transport patients from rural areas into the city or specialty hospitals and so on. That will really enhance the care, the level of care, and the quality of the care. And if you look at the building fire, that's a picture of the Notre Dame that caught fire. The TV interview of the fire chief says, well, why didn't you call in the fire bomber? Well, he said, if we use the fire bomber, the traditional ones, the amount of water and the weight of the water coming down could cause even more damage to the structure and to the content. But imagine if we have a dozen of the smaller eVTOL, we could send up carrying some water, start to spray it, not dumping, and we can control, maybe not put off the fire altogether, but we can slow down the fire spreading, to allow the crew, the ground crew, to move in a safe manner, and eventually, in conjunction, working as a team to control and put out the fire. Those are some of the possible applications for the emergency response, and of course, medical transport. Of course, to do all that, it's not that easy, not that straightforward. There's many challenges, and development is needed. I'm not going to read through all the details, but you can feel free to ask any particular aspect if you're interested. But I'd like to point out the right-hand upper corner, the picture. That's what I call the distributed on-demand and emergency response and disaster relief network. What that means is, many times, of course, sometimes we need specialty platforms and systems and so on for dedicated mission. But in many cases, we don't know when the disaster is going to hit. The picture shown the map of the major flooding in Germany, Netherlands corner area, that kind of unexpected. So it is difficult to preposition. What the proposed concept here is that if we have enough cargo transport eVTOL, and we have air taxi, dozens or hundreds of them in a city nearby, when disaster happens, we can quickly activate those platforms, move them into the disaster area, either right before it to help evacuate people, or right after to bring in help, first responder, medical personnel, and bring in food, water, medicine, and so on to help the disaster area to deal with the aftermath. And of course, there's additional SAE reports published, so you can look it up. One is talk about eVTOL application during pandemic, and the other one is about the eVTOL for firefighting, on-demand fast response firefighting, both in the urban suburb as well as wildfire. And the third one is about the eVTOL application during natural disasters. And some of the three pictures kind of illustrate some of the challenges we had to deal with. The one is the personnel training. That's a simulator picture of a eVTOL. How many pilots and what's the qualification we need, those pilots or remote operator we need. And the middle picture showing that, well, sometimes because eVTOL doesn't have the payload capacity and so on, it may be smart to develop the Swarm technology to allow a fleet of platform to perform missions as a system. And of course, one of the important things is many of the eVTOL are battery powered. So guess what? We need all kinds of charging stations positioned everywhere we can find it. And just as example, talk about the challenges we mentioned on the last slide. One area, of course, is logistic infrastructure. We may not have a ready-made vertiport that we can land where we need it to. So the system may need to be either a portable logistics support system, the charging system, or we may be able to leverage, for example, GA airports. That we have GA airports in many of them in Europe, a lot of them in the US. When emergency happens, they can be a very ideal staging area to coordinate not just eVTOL, but also other platform, other helicopters, fixed-wing airplanes to coordinate the integrated operations. And of course, the right-hand picture indicate the possibility of a charging system, a station that can charge the ground vehicle as well as aerial vehicle. That I hope that we can see a lot of them in the future. So moving forward, I'm not going to read all the details. Feel free to read some of them, but I'd like to highlight just the orange color one, that we think that the public service missions can really help forge positive public opinion and pave the way for wide range use and market expansion. When we are saving lives and helping people, when people see the outcome and the activity and the outcome, positive outcome of those operations, I think we can help dramatically forge the positive perception from general public, so that can benefit the complete urban air mobility, regional air mobility, the complete AAM future development and applications. So with that, I'm going to give the floor back. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny, for your keynote, sharing these comprehensive insights. I'm sure many of us have had some idea on this introduction to future advanced air mobility for emergency and disaster response. But before we start with our panel talk, I'd like to introduce Vincent van den Brekel and Enoch Armengol to all of you. Vincent van den Brekel is the founder of Stockhouse by focusing on AI-based intelligent dispatch solutions for the emergency services. He was previously CEO, founder of Darwin Offshore Wind Turbines and partner at PA Consulting in London, a former fellow at MIT, Cambridge, USA, and holds a doctoral degree from the Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Enoch Armengol is on a mission of bringing mobility safety to everyone, a serial entrepreneur who started his first company in his early 20s and has received multiple international awards in Europe, US, and Asia, leading teams all over the world. Passionate about true innovation since he was a teenager, he founded in Singapore, Palo, the NVB startup, making 6 figures in its first year. 4 years after launching MAM, a 7-figure startup supported by EU professional investors and VCs. Enoch has specialized in product innovation and new user experiences, working with some of the most highly respected companies in the industry in the US, EU, and Asia. Dear audience, please, I'd like to give you a note again and invite you all to share with us your questions about the keynote or around our theme today. You can send your questions at the Q&A section, public chat, top left. Please, now let's start our panel with you, Vincent and Enoch, and come to the first talking point. In the keynotes, we learned the need on future advanced air mobility for emergency and disaster responses, but perhaps we can continue with a bit of an overview of other aspects of emergency mobility. All are, well, Vincent, Enoch, the first questions I would like to address to you first. After that, we would also like to hear the views by Johnny. All are representatives of global organizations, companies, and consultancy businesses. Being the executives, from your experience, how can we see the demands in mobility? Vincent, the question to you will be, can you please explain your solution, if it can be applied across the world? And to Enoch, can you explain, please, short the deep here in technology and why the algorithm has initially been trained for micromobility? And the question to Johnny will be, how different and critical will the infrastructure requirements be for the AAM, Advanced Air Mobility Emergency Responses? But we can start maybe with you, Vincent. How about your solution, please?
Thank you, Serdar. I will give a quick background into the solution we've developed, which is, of course, addresses a very different aspect from emergency services as what Johnny just has shown us. So quickly, the emergency services are in sort of distress, in stress. There is a growing demand, and then I relate not only to the horrible situation we just saw with Johnny, with all the fires and the earthquakes, etc., but generally, the demand for emergency services is growing rapidly, between 5 and 10%, almost all over the world, and that relates to lots of courses. You can see that there's a growing demand as a result of the graying of the population. We get older, there is more traffic, there's more tourism, there's more drug use, etc. So the demand is growing substantially. And at the same time, we have supply shortages. There's a shortage in staff, experienced staff specifically. There is the issue with COVID, when we had ambulances specifically that had to be disinfected every time, so they were taken out of the system all the time they had transported somebody. So what we see as a result is that response times are getting longer and longer. And that, of course, relates to late arrivals. That may relate to increased death rates. That relates to higher healthcare costs generally, because you also have often more complications, etc. So the regular response to that we've always seen generally about growing demand has been to increase, in the classical case, the number of vehicles. So it was always good for Mercedes because they could sell a lot more ambulances, and other brands as well, of course. But the problem that currently exists is that basically if you add vehicles to an emergency system, emergency response system, you also need more staff. You have 2 people on a shift, so often you have 6 people in a day for 24-hour operations. And so a car often relates to 10 to 14 people in total. So for adding cars is not easy because you need to find experienced people. So we were asked to develop to look into alternative solutions. And with we, I mean the National Research Lab for Mathematics and Information Technology in the Netherlands. Are there alternative solutions? Now, the complexity in that alternative, with developing alternative solutions is, of course, that you have to be able to predict demand, and that's difficult because demand is highly volatile, and of course we do not know that Mr. Johnson is going to fall off the stairs of the supermarket in 5 minutes from now at some location. So demand is difficult to predict, but as is very difficult to predict the assessment of what we call the system state. So in the next half hour, which vehicles, we know how many vehicles are on shift, but we don't know which one will be available given demand. We don't, there are coming units into shift, some are going out, the range of the units is different, and they may be offloading patients in a hospital that may take more time, etc., etc. So both demand are volatile, but supply systems are also, the system state is also hard to predict. Now we've developed a solution, an AI-based solution that enabled us really to slash response times with up to 2 minutes in the Netherlands, just by smarter usage of these assets and by smarter relocation of units. So looking at where are these units positioned, and can we, with minimal displacements, put these units in a better position for the upcoming demand, given the system state, etc. Where we've used this, it has had this amazing result of really shorter response times without adding more vehicles. And the big advantage is if you have shorter response time, the vehicle is also ready and sooner, and therewith it becomes re-available to the system sooner. So actually you need fewer vehicles just by positioning them in a smarter and more effective way. But this really addressed a sort of what we call a secondary process in the dispatch process, because the primary process is, of course, the call taking and addressing where is the person and what happened and what's the severity of the incident, and subsequently the dispatch process. So which vehicle do we send to this incident? And that was really the primary process. So what we've done now is we've developed, based on this preparedness tool that we had made to relocate vehicles, we've now built the first global intelligent dispatch method and introduced that into the primary dispatch process. It's like a chess computer. A beginner that plays chess may know how to move a tower, and then perhaps he can think one move ahead and think, hey, I'm gonna be able to make a series advancement with my next move. And the more you advance in chess playing, the more moves you can think ahead. Now, of course, a chess computer can think way ahead, and that's a bit what we introduced here. We have changed now this game from a regular manual process where you always look for a nearby ambulance that you can send to an incident, to a far more strategic position. And that would mean, and then I will stop and I will show you a brief overview of the map, but it might be a bit confusing. That could mean that if an incident happens at a certain location, based on the severity, you may send a different vehicle. So if the person is really in need and may die anytime, then you send the nearest vehicle because you don't want to lose any time. But if it would be me falling off my Amsterdam bicycle, and you send the nearest vehicle, you may create a gap or a shortage of ambulances, given the expectation that a serious incident may happen in the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And then you think, I need to keep that vehicle that's in that region available for the next incident, and I will look for an incident where I will look for an ambulance that is sort of in an overstock at another region of the city. So I have to wait longer. But it enables the system to always keep its preparedness to the highest level. And we've now seen the first preliminary results, and it's really a substantial enhancement on standard dispatch operations. I will briefly show you, but it might be a bit confusing. I'll briefly show you an overview of what the user interface looks like, and the big advantage is that it's really easy for an operator, a dispatcher, to use the application. But I'm currently blocked still to share my screen, but it's not overly important, because you can imagine that AI can really help in incorporating a future, the future state of a region, and therewith make more intelligent decisions in which vehicle to dispatch. And therewith we shorten response time, need fewer vehicles.
Thank you.
That's sort of the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vincent. And so, Enoch, about your part, please, how can you please explain shortly deep hearing, which is new to me and most probably new to most of the audience here. And about your technology, your algorithm, micromobility. Yes, please, Enoch.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks, Heather. So if I can share my screen, please.
Yeah, please. Now we see it.
Okay, great. So we started 4 years ago as a startup, very much focused with the concern of micromobility in the cities. We have seen a dramatic rise of accidents in the cities. I was one of the first users in Barcelona using electric scooter. Everyone was stopping me in the streets. What is this? What is this? And I was using headphones many times for commuting from home to the office. And I realized, like, several times I was almost about to crash with cars, motorbikes, etc. So one of the things that is happening nowadays is that when people are using headphones, reality is like the level of attention and awareness on the surroundings, it decreased around 80%. So in most of the cities in Europe, United States, and Australia, nowadays is not allowed to use headphones, but still, for example, in cities like Copenhagen, it's allowed to use headphones. 60% of the population that goes with electric vehicles or bicycles, they use headphones. So that's really dangerous, especially for e-bikes, because they go faster and they don't have that level of attention that when you go a little bit slower, you can just stop right after. So the reality is, like, urban mobility has, like, all injuries, even fatalities have a skyrocket on the past 5 years, not especially during COVID time, but anyway, it's picking up again. And so it's the first challenge for most of the cities to address nowadays, because there are many things that they can be applied in terms of urban landscape and planification. But let's see what we can do on our side. So for micromobility users, understanding bicycles, electric scooters, as I mentioned, and one wheel, other things with wheels. So what is happening is that they're the most exposed to accidents and less protected by passive safety systems. The reason is because of the cost. Let's say, for example, electric scooter costs around 300, 400 euro. And so applying like a LiDAR system that the cars have, etc., that's not suitable because it's very costly, very expensive. So we realized like we need to create a system that will allow them, these users, to get some kind of alert on the surroundings, especially because most of them, they don't use mirrors, anything to check what is happening behind. They just have to turn. But if we go for even like people who has more, elderly people, I mean, the freedom of movement is not that much, and in many times we're just like relying on faith that we're not going to crash with a car. And there are situations where, for example, if there is a strong light coming from the street, there's a shadow, there is a van blocking the vision. From the side of the user of micromobility, they don't realize that the person who's in the car might not see them, even they're going slow. So what is happening is that we need to create some system that it's economic, low cost, and it can be applied as an active safety system for all these people for prevention. So what we have created is a deep hearing technology. The deep hearing technology is an AI-based technology that we have developed since we started 4 years ago. We've been developing this AI technology. The algorithm is being trained and perfecting the algorithm in order to detect the sounds that are around the user. So for example, if there is a car coming next to you in certain direction, it will detect, and depending on the level of danger, it will drop down the volume, and it will send you a special alert. So if there is a slight danger, it will just drop down the volume of the music you're listening, for example, with headphones, in the case of people who use headphones. If you have a smartwatch, it can send you an alert about vibration. And then what we're looking now is to integrate it into shared mobility, for example, into electric scooters, devices, bicycles, so the user can get a notification, some sense of alert, so he's aware that there is something happening that he has not noticed probably. And that's why it's very important, because it's 360, and we can detect around 50 meters from the user. And especially one of the most challenging things is when this user is moving. If it's static, it's quite easy. But in terms of recognizing the sounds, and especially because our system can go farther than what are the vehicles, what cameras can see, what your eyes can see, we can detect things that the eyes cannot see, which is also even more interesting. So just to give you an idea, we call it the God eyes. So because we allow to see and detect things, not only for micromobility, but also for cars, automotive industry. We're actually in conversations with some big companies in the automotive industry in order to apply this technology into the automotive. Let's say, for example, you're in the car on a red traffic light, there is a van from Amazon on the back, and there is an ambulance on the back of the Amazon van. And you simply don't notice because you have your music, you're making a call, but that person on the ambulance, inside the ambulance, might be dying, and just 20 seconds on each traffic light might depend on that person to live or to die. So we really think that our technology can help to provide a safety solution, a low-cost solution that can be applied in smartwatches, headphones, e-scooters, e-bikes, cars, motorbikes, and even on like many roads when we go to the mountain, we don't have clear visibility, or there are tiny roads, and those are very dangerous roads that also sometimes we don't see there's a car coming next to us, and it can be a very, very crucial moment where our technology, the deep hearing, can alert the user of a potential danger. So that's kind of a little bit explanation. I don't know if we should jump into some questions.
Thank you very much. That was great. But I really need to understand, maybe while you answer the next questions, what if we don't care the vibrations or the warnings that we get from the device? Anyhow, I think we will understand more in the next questions. But yeah, Johnny, just short, please. Yeah, you presented in very detailed way, but how different and critical will the infrastructure requirements be for the AIM emergency responses, please?
That's really one of the key elements that we had to address to enable large-scale deployment of AAM system toward emergency response, disaster response. I'll cover that briefly in two different scenarios. One is like the emergency ambulance dispatch. By the way, I'd like to find a way to apply Vincent's AI dispatch system to the AAM so that we never have enough AAM or the operator. So yeah, I think that technology should be applicable. But if we can just imagine that if every fire station and every EMS position or hospital have a place to park one or two of the eVTOL. Could be compact, so it doesn't take up too much space, but enough for the mission. That could be that alone is undertaking, but not unsurmountable. Compared to what we call the UAM, urban air mobility, right now people are planning to have a few dozen vertiports that can handle heavy traffic, large volume of traffic in and out. I think what we need is a little bit different, but more distributed into more places, smaller per site, maybe only handle one or two platform. That's the differences, but you need to be equipped with the charging systems and so on to enable the dispatch and return. That I think it's somewhat manageable, but let's take the picture into the next level. If we talk about the large scale disaster response, that's a little bit different challenges. For example, where we need to be may not be where the vehicles are. So in some cases, we may need to transport, say, dozens or hundreds of platforms of different kind from different areas, converge into the disaster area. The way to do that, sometimes we don't have the flight range. eVTOL sometimes has limited range. We need relay stations. We need charging stations. So one approach that we're pushing for is that working with the SAE standard committees, try to standardize the charging plug for electric vertical flight machines to be compatible with either the say Tesla supercharger, or even better, the megawatt future electric EV truck, because that's going to come out in large volume. Probably stations all along the highways will have the charging stations. That is one of the approach that we can address to leverage, not try to say emergency response need a complete standalone system. I think that's not going to happen, timing wise, volume wise. But if we can leverage the future ground vehicle and air vehicle infrastructure and add on complement additional systems that we need for the full mission operations, that will be much more realistic. I think can happen in a timely basis.
Thank you, Johnny. So for the next questions, I would appreciate your to the point and short answers, because only 10 minutes left, and I have some questions. I'm sure audience will be waiting for your answers, and you may like to also please review while others speak the public chat. There are some interesting questions to some of you. You may like to comment or answer. And dear audience, please, you can also post your questions or comments on the public chat. And the next would be about the framework conditions and perspective for emergency mobility. And look, this time maybe you can tell us about your white paper that published recently from your technology, and you can explain us further. And then John can talk some more details about firefighting and evacuation operations, about the difference. And then Vincent may like to give us about how shorter response times impact healthcare and operational costs. Yes, please, Enoch, about your white paper, just shortly, please. Yes.
Yeah, sure. Very short. So we decided to publish the white paper because there are no specific works on this application, and no data sets are available until today. And the technology that so first of all, we decided to detect 5 types of sounds, which are the most common on the space, on the, let's say, urban space. And it can be like a siren from an ambulance, police, car horn, and then if there is a truck going back, and also the ring bell from a bicycle. So these are the things we focus on in the beginning to train our algorithm, and our algorithm now it's working at 80% of efficiency. I'm happy to share with any of you the white paper if you're interested to get more details. I know we are quite short on time, so that's pretty much how we can synthesize.
Great. Thank you, Enoch. And yes, please, shortly, Johnny, about emergency responses to make a difference in firefighting and evacuation operations. Can AAM do that? Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. My personal there's many applications we briefly mentioned earlier, but for firefighting. But one of my personal favorite is that quite often we send people in to fight wildfire, and we'll drop them in through parachute, a helicopter, but we have a hard time getting them out. Fire can move at 14 miles per hour, and nobody can outrun that kind of when wind changes direction. A lot of times people can get in trouble. So one of my missions is to find a way to use compact small units and don't have to have a long range. But in case of an emergency, when the wind changes direction, our firefighters are in danger, we can send them in, get them out quickly. And of course, so we can do the same for the wildfire evacuation. Sometimes the last few hundred people stuck in the suburb area, they need evacuation, and this can make a huge differences. And third one, of course, is a high-rise building. When the fire get burst in the middle of the high-rise building, eVTOL could either help control the fire or pick up the people on the upper floors, get them out of the rooftop.
Thank you. Johnny, you may like to maybe review some questions. Also, you, Enoch, Johnny, seem related to your topics. Yes, while Vincent tell us about shorter response times. Yes, please, Vincent.
Now, yeah, there has been interesting research in by connecting the different data from the different healthcare providers. But shortening response times has big advantages for healthcare costs, actually, in case of severe incidents specifically. So in case of heart attacks, it is shown in the US that actually every minute of delayed response leads to additional cost of about 7% for that person, and that translates to about $1,500. And on an aggregated level in the US, then we're talking about $7 billion US, just 1 minute of delay. And this in brain TS, we have a similar solution. 1 minute, 2 million nerve cells die, and so the being there fast actually saves a lot of healthcare costs. And then, of course, if you're there fast, the ambulance becomes available there fast, re-available to the system faster again too. So you can also save on your operational cost. So there is definitely a need for speed. It's not a good idea to delay the response.
Thank you, Vincent. And about the final questions regarding some example advices and responsibilities, just maybe 1 minute per question. Maybe, Vincent, you can continue about how your system works with the predicted future states. Can this be applied to address other mobility challenges?
No, that's actually very interesting. I think we follow the sort of beachhead strategy where we focus on the emergency services first, ambulances in particular, but definitely in the future with the mobility sort of spectrum changing. If we have shared vehicles, You don't want to search for your vehicle, wait for a long time. So we can, by deploying vehicles and dispatching vehicles much more intelligently, you can have vehicles waiting for you in front of your door or being there available much faster than regularly. And there you also need fewer vehicles. The same goes for taxis. Everywhere where sort of demand is somewhat volatile and complex to predict, this system would help making a more effective use of the limited number of assets, and there was you make the switching cost much lower. So people will not use a shared car very often if they think they have to wait for somebody else. But if they know they don't have to wait, then why not share these assets? So there is definitely potential in other markets in the mobility scene as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Vincent. And Enoch, what are the challenges, please, about the deep hearing?
Yeah, well, I see in terms of the deep hearing, and I see the question of John Carr on the chat. So very interesting what he mentions. There is definitely like micromobility users, and in many cases, the ones who cause also accidents to elderly people and people with disabilities. And actually, this is something that each city has to take over some regulations and be very strict on this. Actually, one of the things we didn't mention is that our algorithm can be trained also, and we're already starting to train it actually for elderly people. So elderly people can also, with a bone conduction device, they don't need to have these in-ear devices specialized for hearing. So with a bone conduction device, which are quite affordable, or some kind of smartwatch, we're actually in a partnership with a startup of smartwatches for only elderly people. They can receive a notification if there is some danger, like also a car. However, we cannot predict when a bicycle can come or someone is going to crash, because bicycles, they barely make any sound. So that's a challenge for the city. We can't do anything in regards to this from the city and from each person to be responsible. And also we can detect all kind of, and actually it's even more easy to detect these kind of events for people who's walking. So if you're distracted with your smartphone and you go with your AirPods, it can send you an alert as well if there is a car approaching at fast speed, for example.
Thank you, Enoch. And I see Johnny is connected, but in the listening mode. So before we conclude, Johnny, please use the I button to the right of microphone. You leave audio and connect audio again by using your microphone. Johnny, I understand you hear me because you're in the listening mode. We want to conclude together with you. Leave audio and connect audio again using the button to the right of microphone. Yes, please. And thank you, Vincent, Enoch, and Johnny, for your contribution. It's not an easy topic, and we had a very precise and tangible discussion. So I hope I haven't promised too much at my introduction. Some questions just discussed and answered already, and our audience can reach to our panelists, of course. And so let me quickly say thanks to Ben, and a big thank to you, Johnny. I understand you are experiencing some issues connecting to the audio, but we see you that still in here. And I appreciate, of course, connecting early in the morning from the US due to time zone difference. And thanks to you, Vincent and Enoch, for having shared your views in such a succinct and structured way. Not only your thoughts and insights on this topic itself and beyond, which EU Tech. Great to see you here again, Johnny. And this is the right time that you joined, actually, because now our chairman will provide you a small gift, your 3 certificates. Let me present you the 3 certificates that we prepared for you. Now you have a 3 in Africa, Johnny. And not only Johnny, of course, you too, Vincent.
Thank you.
And of course, Enoch, you have also a 3 in Africa. Now maybe if you can have some time, you can go and see them, and maybe also for watering. And That was great being with you, and please do get in touch with us for any questions, dear audience, at any time. Thank you very much again. And on whether or not there are many ways to get to know us and our work better, thank you very much for joining today, and have a nice day. Thank you.
May I ask
Thank you.
perhaps ask you one question?
Yes, please, Vincent.
We are, I'm sorry, but perhaps this is not the forum, but we are very interested to explore other countries and also to increase the funding of the company. So if there's a link there, then somebody could get in touch with us at Stockhouse in Amsterdam. So I'm sorry, I didn't mention it.
Good to hear this before everybody leaves. And so thank you very much, Vincent. Thank you. I appreciate Johnny, Enoch, Vincent, and Bent. See you. Bye.
See you. Thank you very much for participating. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.